Good morning, everybody, and welcome to OLC4O Term 1B. Today is December 21st, 2022. I am your instructor, Mike Laverty. We are on to class number 23. So we're, about two-thirds, almost three-quarters of the way done the course broadcast. We're still working on Unit 3. We're almost done. We've got about 3 or 4 assignments left in Unit 3 before we move on to Unit 4. So let's get on with today's lesson. So we are in week 6 of classes in Term 1B. There will be no classes December 26th to the January 5th. Please be aware the WASA office will be closed on December 23rd. It'll actually be closed at noon on December 22nd. So we are shutting down for the holiday season tomorrow, so that'll be your last chance to get in touch with somebody at the office. But then we'll come back for the final 3 weeks of class, which will be, will lead us towards that last broadcast of January 26th. So we've got Unit 1 taken care of, Unit 2 is taken care of, and we are currently finishing off Unit 3, which should take us pretty much will be done by the end of this week and a little bit of week 7, but most of week 7 will be devoted to talking about Unit 4, maybe a little bit of Unit 8, and then we should have about a solid week and a half to do our final exam review. So lots of time for review and preparation. And then maybe going back and seeing if there's some assignments we could cover in a bit more detail. So if you're watching on YouTube, you can pause the screen and have a look at the ways to join the class live. And then you can always contact your teacher, look in your study guide, talk to the WASA office, talk to your learning center for this information. Thanks for keep watching the YouTube videos. I really appreciate the views. It's always great to see the content is being watched, and feel free to leave a comment or email me directly or send me a message directly about the content on the YouTube. It would be great to get some feedback from students on that. And again, if you're watching on YouTube, you can always pause the recording and write down the ways you can submit your work to your teacher. And again, this information is in the study guide or by talking to your learning center. These are the best ways to contact me. So yet again, just pause the screen or just, talk to your learning center, add me as a friend on Facebook, send me an email, phone me at one of these 2 numbers during these times, Monday through Thursday. So again, this week's a little bit different because 12 p.m. the office will close, and then we are not here on Friday. So if you'd like to get in touch with me by phone, today would be the day to do it. And here's your next steps and where you should be in this course. So you should have read all the pages of Unit 1 and 2, and you should be reading about the first 2/3 of Unit 3, so pages 1 through 26. You should have assignments 1 through 29 completed by now, and you should make a plan for completing assignments 30 and beyond. All right, so we'll talk about our words of the day, look at a headline, and we'll look at assignment 35 and look at assignment 36. So 35 is a long one. There's many pieces to it. And 36, I'm hoping we get to it because that's the cover letter. So your learning goals are to learn more about formatting dialogue, reviewing the writing process to compose an opinion paragraph and a news report, and look at several examples of cover letters to create a model for your own. And you'll know you'll be successful if you can apply that understanding of dialogue to complete assignment 35. You can practice the writing process to complete your opinion paragraph and your news report. and you can use your understanding of cover letters to complete assignment 36. All right, so up on the board we got a couple of comics that I found online. The first one says, "Hello, I'm applying for the graphic design position." So, the joke there being that it's terrible graphic design and they're applying for a graphic design position. I used to work at the Sulico Public Library, and one time actually did receive a resume written in, I believe it was either pencil crayon or crayon, and it was by a very young man, and I think he was way too young to even work at the library, but it's pretty cute to get his cover letter. On the right, we see a cartoon that reads, "A vibrant imagination is an excellent quality for the job, but not the CV." So the joke there being that a lot of employers value creativity and imagination, but not when you're making stuff up about your life. CV, of course, is short for curriculum vitae, and more on that in a few slides. So, we're going to talk about cover letters today, and we've talked a lot about advertising and marketing in this course. And a cover letter is public relations. It's marketing for yourself, and you're putting out the best version of yourself, and you're showing someone that you can communicate professionally. And it's one of the most immediate ways that literacy skills are important, right? So you may not, some people may not think that literacy skills are that important in their life, and then you can debate that, but we all need to find a job. We all need to make a living somehow, and to get your foot in the door, to get somebody's attention, you've got to use writing. And a cover letter, a resume, so that's assignment 36, so we'll get into that in a second. So we've got an Anishinaabe word and an English word. So we've got, so Mikwanuki is she or he finds work, finds a job. That's a verb. We've got employ, and in this case, this is very similar words. So that's to hire or engage the services of a person or persons, provide employment for, have, or keep in one's service. So from the Latin implicare, which means to be involved with or attached to. You may have heard the word implicate. So when you implicate someone, you involve them, they're involved with. So that's the root of the word employment. To be involved with, to be attached to, to be part of a team, to be part of a company. And when you employ someone, you kind of bring them on board, right? And when you are employed, you're part of the team. And when you're unemployed, you're not part of the team, and you're actively looking for work. So we have inanuj, which is a verb, which means to hire to do a certain job, hire to go to a certain place. And gwina wanuki, which is she or he is unable to find work, unable to find a job. And it's got that GW prefix, which is very similar to the English. In English we have words like, when you're employed, you have a job. When you're unemployed, you don't have a job. So the un is a prefix that basically cancels whatever comes in front of it. Complete, incomplete. So that GW prefix is equivalent to the UN in English, right? So that GW, sometimes GWI, sometimes GWA. It basically cancels whatever comes after it, right? So instead of finding work, you are unable to find work. Couple of related English terms. We've got curriculum vitae, which is a CV, also called a curriculum vitae. It's a detailed account of one's work experience, professional training, and educational background as prepared by a person applying for a job. From the Latin curere, I'm not sure how that's pronounced, to run. Curriculum, which means course, and vitae means life. So your curriculum vitae literally means the course of your life. And a curriculum vitae is similar to a resume, right? Because the curriculum vitae is going to list all the things you've done whereas the cover letter is more like an introduction to who you are. And the cover letter will introduce either a resume or a curriculum vitae. So a curriculum vitae is usually used for a very professional job. If you want to be a teacher, like a college instructor or a university professor, or like if you're like a researcher, you'll also use a curriculum vitae, and it'll talk about all the research you do and all the different projects that you're involved in. Human resources, that's a noun. It's people, especially the personnel employed by a given company, institution, or the like. From the Latin humanus, which means man or human being, and from the Latin sugere, to rise, or the Old French resorde, which is rise again, recover. So the word resource, so if you break down that word resource, you'll see another prefix, the re, which means like again. So to source again. So a resource, like a natural resource, would be water and wind, and they're things that kind of come back again, like plants and farms and forests. If you look after them, they come back again. So in a way, it's kind of to talk about human resources, it's like, but like if you are someone who works in human resources, you do see people come and they go, and they are a resource. They rise, they fall, they rise again, they recover. But it's it's like a whole field, and it's also like a field of study. You can go to school to become a human resources expert, but it's usually a department. Most large organizations will have a human resources department and a human resources manager, and that's all they do is they take care of hiring, firing, training, professional development, all that. So here's our headline for today. January 6th committee calls for criminal charges against Trump. So if you follow the American news, this is the huge story that finally broke. This committee's been working for about a year to go over all the evidence, and they finally released their report. So Chairman Benny Thompson speaks at the House Select Committee investigating the January 6th 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol, holds its final meeting on Capitol Hill in Washington on December 19th. So there is the headline, the caption, and the photograph. And there's our very simple headline with our nouns in blue, prepositions in red, verbs in green, adjectives in orange. And we'll break that down. So the January 6th committee, so that's a noun phrase. So it's something that they've just come to know it, and it's been in the media a lot. The January 6th committee is that whole committee. I'm not sure why they don't capitalize the C. I'm kind of confused as to that, because I did look up a bunch of examples of this, and they tend to not capitalize the C on January 6th committee, but it is a noun phrase, so it's one thing. So they're the subject of this sentence, this headline, and what they did is they called, or in this case calls, because it's kind of like present tense, for preposition. They didn't call just for any charges. They called for criminal charges. So again, we have that adjective noun combo against Trump. So we have, for and against are like a preposition pair, right? So they're calling for criminal charges, but the charges are against Trump. And of course, Trump is a proper noun. So it's one of our former words of the day. It's a mononym, right? It's a single name. Mono means one, nym means name. It's a one name. So if you get really, really famous, you can just go by your last name. So if we use the word Trump, we all know who we're talking about. Sometimes Mr. Trump, sometimes Donald Trump, but usually just the 5 letters Trump. So It's a mononym, but it's also a proper noun, always capitalized. There's the breakdown of the article, and we'll take a closer look at a few of these paragraphs. So, a congressional committee is recommending the Justice Department pursue 4 criminal charges against Donald Trump over his bid to overturn the 2020 election results. So, even though they just called him Trump in the headline, when you're writing a news report, when you're writing any kind of professional document, you usually use the person's full name the first time you mention them. So that's the first paragraph of the article. So Donald Trump has mentioned his full name, and they might shorten that to Mr. Trump or simply Trump in the later paragraphs, but you always mention their full name. Same with same if you're going to use like an acronym, like if you're going to use something like NATO. The first time you mention it, you'll say the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, comma, NATO, and then you'll refer it to the short form. So short forms are really handy, but the long form comes first and the short form comes later. So you've got that independent clause, and then you've got a phrase at the end. So pushing prosecutors to take legal action against the former U.S. president as he seeks to reclaim the White House. Right? So we've seen this pattern quite a bit. You've got an independent clause that introduces the main idea, right? So, and it follows that information pyramid, where you get the important stuff first, and then you get the additional info second. And in this case, the main information could stand alone as its own sentence. We could put a period there, but they chose not to. They chose to put a comma and then add some additional information here. Okay, we got an example of several adjectives used to modify one noun. So this unprecedented move Monday capped a... Okay, so the noun is investigation. But this investigation is dramatic. It took nearly 2 years, and it's a legislative, right? So it's dramatic, nearly 2 year, and it's a legislative, right? So there's 3 adjectives used to describe that one noun, right, into the January 6th, 2021 riot at the Capitol. And then we've got a quote from someone involved in the story. Faith in our system is the foundation of American democracy. If that faith is broken, so is our democracy. Donald Trump broke that faith. Committee Chair Benny Thompson told the meeting ahead of a unanimous vote to make the criminal referral. So sometimes you could just simply say he said, or Committee Chair Benny Thompson said. But sometimes and then again, we're talking about a dialogue tag. So the dialogue tag is usually like he said, she said, they reported, right? So the dialogue tag can be a lot longer than that, though. So in this case, the dialogue tag is he told the committee ahead of a unanimous vote to make the criminal referral. So the dialogue tag is sort of doing double duty here. It's telling us who talked, and then it also tells us a little bit more information about, when he said it. Gives us a little more context about what's happening in the story. All right, so now we're on to assignment number 35. And we talked about this last class. So, and we're talking about punctuating dialogue and using direct quotations, right? So we already went through most of this. We touched upon when the quote gets interrupted, when we're talking about a divided quotation. So either when we're quoting somebody in a news report, or if we're writing fiction and the person talks. So usually when the quote gets divided, it's usually part of the quote, and then you get the dialogue tag or the slug in the middle. So this soup, comma, the elder said, tastes just like my kokum. So we talked about this in the last class. So apostrophe S, it's the soup that belongs to his kokums. We talked about when to capitalize a quote. So if you're quoting somebody and you're quoting the full sentence of what they said, then you want to use the capital letter. But if you're quoting them in mid-sentence, then you don't do that. And it's always nice if you can integrate their quotes with the. So if we look at this, we've got the author's words. The author's words it starts off with the author's words. And then we've got the Robert's words. And his words are contained with the quotation marks. And that's the whole point of a quotation mark, right? Is to tell the reader, these are not my words. I am quoting somebody else. And so when you use quotation marks, you have to be really careful to always quote the person directly, right? So there's actually a mistake here. So the period should be inside the quotation mark, not on the outside. All right, so yesterday we stopped on this point. So when you're writing fiction and there's more than one person, when there's two people or three people having a conversation, every time a new speaker changes, you have to add you have to add a line, add a space, and then go down a line and then put the quotation. If there's two people talking, you don't need to say he said, she said. You have to establish first that you have two characters, but once we know there's two characters, you can just go back and forth. If there's three or more people having a conversation, then you will need to put the, Robert said, Jimmy said. Otherwise, it'll get way too confusing because we won't know. But if two people are talking, then we know. This person talks, then that person talks, then this person talks. And if the person just keeps on talking, the paragraph just keeps on going. But every time a new person talks, we have to drop down. Actually, no, this is where we left off yesterday. We talked about when somebody's interrupted. So the dash is used to show interruptions where someone is interrupted, they trail off, someone cuts them off, right? So the first speaker was going to keep talking, but the second speaker cuts them off by saying, huh? And then this second dash, see how those two are connected? The second dash tells me where he keeps on talking. He keeps the point going. So he gets cut off, gets interrupted, but then he goes back and he finishes what he's going to say. Now here is the example from, this is the question. This is from your unit assignment. So if you have a look at this, you can see some things that come off right off the bat. So, excuse me. So, don't overthink it. There are some basic rules that you always have to follow. Like a sentence has to start capitalized, and a sentence has to have punctuation at the end. And that applies for dialogue, that applies for non-dialogue. So those basic rules, it stays the same. We always capitalize the start of a sentence, right? That rule is never violated. The capitalization tells us a new sentence has started, right? We always end. A sentence must end with some form of punctuation. Either one of the marks, question, exclamation, or just a period, or it ends with a quotation mark if someone's being quoted, right? So That's the basic thing you got to keep in mind here. And commas, right? So you're looking for capitalization, punctuation, and commas, which is, of course, is a form of punctuation. So have a look at that. You know, where do you need your quotation marks? Where should the commas go? Where should the periods go? And is everything capitalized? That's your basic, 1, 2, 3 for this assignment. Are the quotation marks there? Are the commas and periods used properly? And have the right words been capitalized? All right, exercise 2 of assignment 35 asks you to skim and or scan the news report Anishinaabe received complaints over HST to answer the following questions. So, what is the main idea of the news report? Phrase it in one sentence if possible. Part 2, go through the story to determine the sequence of events. That is the order in which the events leading up to the news story actually happened. You may be surprised to see that they are not reported in chronological order, right? And if we think back to our lesson on the news report, you can recall that authors of news reports use the information triangle, where the reader gets the most important stuff first, and they get the additional stuff second. So when something happens, sometimes the most important thing doesn't happen first, right? The most important thing might happen at the end, which is, very, very logical, right? So, or the most important detail might happen in the middle of the story, right? So when you write the news report, the order of the events might be mixed up, and you might get this part first and that part second. So, and to do that, you may need to chart it out. So, of course, we're talking about HST, which stands for the Harmonized Sales Tax, where, provincial and federal sales tax were at one point separate, and then they got harmonized with the invention of HST. So here's the article. The Anishinaabe Nation is calling for retailers to honor point-of-view sales exemption after community members reported being gouged by companies. Even after the province has sent out notices informing businesses, okay, so you notice the quotation mark, right? So we know that somebody's talking. On and off reserve to tax exemption, we are hearing stories of complaints trying to gouge First Nation customers, said Grand Council Chief Patrick Matahabi. These retailers are now breaking their own government's laws as well as ignoring First Nations rights. Anishinaabe Nation rep said only one case was reported of a business not honoring the tax exemption. Most businesses throughout northwestern Ontario had been honoring the tax exemption. So we're going back 12 years here to September 2nd, 2010. Ontario's 8% PST and the federal 5% GST were harmonized into the 13% HST July 1st, with a goal of providing a competitive advantage to business within the province. So there you go. So that's, if you're trying to establish a sequence of events, if you're trying to figure out the order that something happened, you need dates. So that's a date. And that helps. That helps with sequence, okay? This story was published in September 2nd. So you got, July, August. So 2 months after the HST comes into effect, this article is published. So there's your timeline, right? Although First Nation citizens had to pay the HST since July 1st, a last-minute agreement was reached with the federal and provincial governments by First Nation organizations and groups. The agreement said that First Nation citizens in Ontario are exempt from the 8% provincial portion of the 13% HST. The agreement also called for retailers to honor this tax exemption effective September 1st. So you may have noticed the square brackets. So the square brackets is when you quote somebody, and that's when you change a word. You change what they said. to make it fit grammatically with what you're saying. Matahabi encouraged community members to call their local member of provincial parliament to provide them with the name of any business refusing to respect the point of sale exemption to the 8% provincial sales tax. That was part of the deal we negotiated with Ontario. They accepted responsibility for ensuring that all businesses in the province complied with their tax regime, Matahabi said. We showed Ontario that we were prepared to take to the streets to fight for our rights. We are also prepared to fight for our rights in stores and malls, if necessary. First Nation citizens can apply for refunds of the taxes they paid throughout July and August by filling out refund applications, which were to be made available after August 1st at band council offices, online at the Ministry of Revenue. There's another date, right? So, August 1st, right? So we had July 1st. We've got August 1st. We've got September 2nd, right? All those dates are important. Refund applications, which need to be submitted between September 1st and November 1st, must contain the original sales receipts and a photocopy of both sides of the status Indian card, or in the case of Indian bands and councils, a letter from the band or council certifying the consumption of qualifying offers or of supplies for band activities. So again, if you're trying to establish a timeline and the sequence of events, use those dates. July 1st, legislation's put out. August 1st, they make a deadline for making refund applications. September 2nd, the article is published. And then you've got this into the future. So September to November, there's a deadline for submitting said receipts. So once you've done that, once you have paraphrased the article, what's it about? Then exercise 3 asks you to write an opinion paragraph based on the information provided in the news report. Notice as you read the news report again to get ideas that the news report itself is free of opinion. It is only the quotations from the people involved that contain opinions. Use the organizational chart, checklist, and rubric to guide your writing. So you'll find that in your course, in your unit course material. So you're writing an opinion paragraph, right? So when we're writing an opinion paragraph, right? So let's use that writing process. So part 1, you have to ask yourselves, do I agree with Matahabi or not? You know, so do you side with so you've got to make an opinion some way or the other. So do you agree with Matahabi or not? Do you side with the businesses or the First Nations people who are feel they have been gouged? So you've got some people involved here. You've got First Nations people. You've got organizations. And you've got businesses. And you got the government. Right? That's First Nations organizations. So there's a few people involved here. So you could attack this a few ways. You know, like did the government make the right decision? You know, is this fair to First Nation customers? So you have to express an opinion And one of the best ways to find out where you stand on an issue is to phrase it in a question, right? So, if you're talking about controversial issues like gun control and, like access to, like the legalization of marijuana, abortion issues, like really hot topic issues, you got to phrase them as questions, right? So, what is this or was this fair to First Nation customers? And then your answer to that question is going to provide your opinion. No, this is not fair to First Nations customers, or yes, this was fair. No, the government did not make the right decision, and then here's why, right? So you have to, but number one, you've got to you have to express an opinion, right? So that's your top priority. You need to express an opinion. This is an opinion paragraph, right? So what is your opinion? Tell us your opinion, right? And then you're going to write a rough copy and a final copy. You're going to use all the information examples you have read in this course so far to write another news. Oh, sorry, this is going into the so that's what I would do. So and then from there I would follow the same I would follow the same methods that we've been doing in this course. Just for time's sake, I won't go into too much detail, but so part 1, do some planning. Part 2, do some writing. And then what I would suggest there is to write. You're going to write out your opinion. And then you're going to come up with at least 3 reasons you are right. And then I want you to find, find at least 3 quotes from the text, right? So you need to be citing the text specifically, citing the article, right? So part 1, you do some planning, you find out where you stand on the issue. Once you know where you stand, then you write out your opinion. Then you come up with at least 3 reasons why you are right, and then you find at least 3 quotes from the text, right? And then once you've done that, then you're going to move on to step 3 of the writing process, which is our revision process. So part 3, or step 3, you will revise. And when you revise, you'll organize. Oops. You will organize your reasons. Organize your quotes. And just make sure you make a strong argument, okay? From start to finish. Okay, we've got about 15 minutes left, so let's keep on rolling. Okay, so exercise 4, you're submitting a news report, okay? So Using all the information examples you have read in this course so far to write another news report, using the writing process, you are to write a news report about what happened to Gary in Chapter 9 of your novel. There may be some details you have to make up, but be sure that your story flows and makes sense. Use the rubric to guide your writing. You know what? I'm gonna switch gears here really quickly because I want to cover. This might take a little bit longer, so I think it makes more sense. What I'm gonna do is we're just gonna jump ahead, and we're gonna talk about assignment 36, and then we'll come back to assignment 35 tomorrow. But I want to finish on this because I've already talked a bit about cover letters and. We can always come back to the news report tomorrow. So we're talking about writing a cover letter, and we're thinking about our purpose and our audience, and providing the most important details of information you can as an introduction to your resume. So once again, there should be no mistakes in spelling, grammar, and punctuation when you complete this thing, right? So, and that applies to your final copy, right? Try to make your rough copy clean, okay? But that final copy's got to be really clean and free of mistakes, especially because you want to treat this thing as an exercise in you getting a job. So in you applying for a job, you're trying to get work. You've got to present the best version of yourself. You can't have spelling mistakes. You know, especially the person you're applying to, their name, their company, all that stuff's got to be airtight. So, we're looking at formatting a cover letter. How do we format it, right? So that's always important, right? So, in this class, we've talked a lot about templates, right? Using a template, using a model. You know, and we saw that a template is literally something that's used in machine manufacturing, in the manufacturing of physical products. It's a guideline. It's something you compare your work to. It helps you do it the right thing. So cover letter is a very standardized, formulaic piece of writing. You don't need to invent your own format. What you have to focus on is the content of that cover letter. And a cover letter has these 6 components. It's got a header, a salutation, an opening paragraph, middle paragraphs, a closing paragraph, and a complimentary close and signature. So it's got to have those 6. And here's how we make that happen. I know the writing's pretty small there, but don't worry about the content of the writing. Just that's how it looks when it's written. That's an example of a cover letter that I found online. You know, that's how it's written. You've got the header. You've got the salutation. That's our salutation. That's our header. We've got our first paragraph. We've got a middle paragraph, We've got a closing paragraph. And then we have that closing signature, right? All right. So let's have a look at our header, okay? So the header is the first thing that appears on your cover letter. And if we go back to this, you see how it's written in block. It's usually written in block format, and everything runs across this nice straight line right here. So everything's written there. We're not indenting the first paragraph, the first line of each paragraph. It's just a nice block formatted. Everything is sucked. Everything is pushed to the left-hand side. And so what you do is you put your name, right? Your name, ditto, right? Your address, and then your contact info, right? So that's my address. And then you put a space, right? and then you put the date, another space, and then you put the company information, right? So the company you're applying to, right? So that's all this right here, right? So, and that's how that's formatted, right? So your name, your contact information, space, the date, space, and then the company you're applying to. Now, in the olden days, you would apply to a job and you would physically give the person a piece of paper, and that's still common today. But a much more common practice today is people just accept cover letters and resumes through email. They accept it by email or like some kind of online distribution platform. But if you're sending somebody through email, you usually just include your phone number and your email address, and you don't need to put the physical mailing address. But if you're sending it by the mail, if you're actually physically dropping it off, or if you're putting this thing in the mail, then your cover letter should have your address and their address. And then you put attention manager, and then use their full name, right? So and their position, right? So you always use their name if you know their name. If you don't know their name, you can just put manager or attention, human resource manager, or something to that effect. But try to find the person's name. So here's the salutation, okay? So if you know their name, which is that's number one. That's the number one situation. You know their name. And you simply say, "Dear Nancy Wilson," okay? So if you don't know their name, then you put "Dear Hiring Manager," and try to find the right title, okay? The right job title, right? You never know the kind of people you're working with. Some people might not care that you get their job title wrong. Some people, that's really going to anger them, and it's really going to put them in a bad mood, right? So you have to do a bit of research. Pick up the phone, make a phone call, do a Google search, look for their website, go on their Facebook page. Do your research and try to find the name of that person, right? So the number one situation is you put their name. So, "Dear Nancy Wilson," I know her first name and last name. I've spelled it correctly, right? Pay close attention. Get their name right. And if you don't know their name, look at their company profile. Find out if they've got a person who's in charge of hiring, right? So that's your salutation. Then you got your first paragraph, okay? So in this first paragraph, it says, "I'm excited to apply for the web developer position at Craft Pages. I've been programming websites and using CSS to create user-friendly experiences since I was in middle school. So it's always been a passion of mine. I've also been intrigued by your company ever since it won Most Innovative at the National Web Development Awards 2 years ago. I strive to stay on the cutting edge of the web design and development. So when I saw this job posting, I knew I had to apply." So your first paragraph, you should reference the job you're applying for immediately, right? So in the first sentence, web developer position, right? So the person has referenced it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 words in, they've referenced it. The web developer position at the Craft Pages. So right off the bat, tell the person what job you're applying for. And then tell the employer why you want to work for them and their team. So that's your introduction, right? So this is who I am. This is why I want to work for your company. And if you can get specific and you can mention something about the company, that's a really really important way to get their attention. Like for example, I know that here in Sulico, they just recently opened up the Pelican High Peak Youth Healing Lodge, right? So it's a healing lodge for youth who can come and heal and recover and get their life back on track. So if you're writing a cover letter and you want to work at that healing lodge, you should go on their Facebook page, you should go on their website, you should Google them and just say like, oh, I'd love to join your team. I saw that you're doing this program and I would love to help youth, and show them you know what they're doing, and that really helps, right? So who are you? Why are you applying for this job? The second paragraph is where you talk about your most relevant experience, right? So keyword most. What's your most relevant experience, skills, and qualifications that make you the right person for the job? So in this example online, this person has given examples, how they started a website, they've worked within budgets, they've helped their clients, so you're just selling yourself. So if you're applying for a web design job, and if I'm an employer and I'm going to hire you to be my web developer, I want to know what you've done and how you did it. If you're applying to be a youth counselor, tell me how you've worked with youth and how that went. If I'm applying for you to work at my rink and you're going to be a Zamboni driver or maintain something, tell me where you worked and what jobs you've done, right? So that's what you're doing, right? What's your most relevant experience, right? So, and think about the information triangle, right? Where we've got the most important stuff up here and the least important stuff down here. So this second paragraph, this after you introduce yourself, this you got to hit them with your best stuff, right? You should hire me because of this, right? They have a third paragraph, which it's useful information. They are making their case. They're trying to convince the employer that they're a good person for the job, but it's secondary. They've already used their best cards. They've already used their best qualifications, but they've got a few more they want to include, and that's fine. So, first paragraph, introduce yourself. Second paragraph, give them your best stuff. Third paragraph, give them a little more. Closing paragraph, number one, you want to thank them. So just simply thank them for even just considering you. And then you want to give them a call to action, right? So tell them, feel free to call or email me. You might even want to say, prefer. Like, I would prefer if you emailed me to let me know either way, right? So give them a call to action. So thanks for the opportunity. Here's how to contact me. Then you provide a complimentary close and a signature. You want to use a word like sincerely, regards, best, respectfully. Don't use words like cheers or see you later. Again, you're not being casual here. You're being very serious. And if you're handing in a paper copy, actually sign your name and then type your name underneath. So you do sincerely, leave a space for an actual signature, and then you put your real name. And if you're doing it digitally, you can always sign it and scan it or find some way. But if it's a paper copy, you want to sign your name. So that's a perfect place to end off. Thanks for tuning in today. And we'll come back tomorrow and finish off assignment 35 and hopefully the rest of Unit 3.